CWP?
I believe it's an infringement. I think that people ought to be able to. I think training's good. There is a difference between training being a good thing and something that government ought to have the purview to mandate. And the government can take an 8-hour class and turn it into 16 hours. It could turn it into 24 hours. It could turn it into weeks. I think any infringement on the Second Amendment, especially when it comes to people's ability to defend themselves with a handgun, is counter to the right to self-defense, which I believe is a natural right.
Senator, have you read the criteria that is codified by statute with respect to the subjects covered in the CWP training?
Oh, I don't have a problem with the subjects covered. I just have a problem with us mandating it.
For example, in the training, Senator, they give information on handgun use and safety. You agree that's important, correct?
Absolutely.
Another example, information on the proper storage practice for handguns with emphasis on storage practices that reduces the possibility of accidental injury to a child. You don't have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that. Let me ask you this. Would you have a problem with every parent being required to take a test on how a child eats a hot dog? Because that's dangerous, and children choke to death eating hot dogs. So would it be okay if we had a government-mandated class for hot dog eating? Because people die. And we probably should require people to take swimming lessons because more people drown than by accidental gunshots.
And you would agree, Senator, that South Carolina is the 7th deadliest nation or state in the nation for gun homicide.
And
are you aware of that?
And I don't agree with homicides being legal.
Have you read the statistic where there were 5 gun murders for every 100,000 people in the state in 2010?
And I agree that murder should remain illegal. I'm not supporting murder. What I'm supporting is people being able to defend themselves. And I do think that folks, when they are armed, are more capable of defending themselves because policemen, and I didn't invent the quote, but they are too heavy to carry and there are not enough of them.
And the essence of your belief in the proposed bill is it emanates from the Second Amendment, correct?
Yes.
And do you agree when the Second Amendment was authored that it was authored in the context of protecting state sovereignty and being a part of the militia?
And personal self-defense. I think that the founders, I've read the writings about personal self-defense, and it wasn't all about, part of it was being able to defend yourself from a tyrannical government, but also personal self-defense was believed to be a right, and I believe it still is today.
Well, and at least there are some Supreme Court justices that disagree that the right to bear arms by an individual is, in fact, what the framers intended outside the concept of a militia. And I point you to a recent case law with respect to Justice Stevens's dissent in 2 seminal cases in that area. But my question really isn't to address whether the right to bear arms can be is legal or not, because I think the cases make that clear. But the cases also make clear that the state and municipalities can make restriction on those rights. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. In 1973, Roe v. Wade says it was okay to kill a child before it was born. So, we've got a majority of Supreme Court justices that have made a lot of decisions I don't agree with, and I don't think are rooted in the Constitution, but they're rooted in an agenda. And the agenda is the progressive march that this country's taken, and I don't think for the better.
And this state chose, Senator, would you agree that they wanted to have folks who were walking around with guns trained? And that's why we have the concealed weapons permit. Is that true?
Yes, and that was fought very hard by folks that were against people being able to carry weapons. That was I've heard the stories, and actually I appreciate hearing them again from the senator from Pickens, our judiciary chairman, about the fight that they had to go through just to get the CWP passed, and the gnashing of teeth about all the blood that was going to be in the streets and how it was going to be the Wild West. And if you look, the number of people with CWPs that have actually been involved in shootings, the murders that you talk about and others in this committee have talked about, are not committed by CWP holders, and they're not committed by law-abiding citizens. And I would argue this, as other states have shown, if we allow folks to be able to defend themselves in this state, it will not result in more murder and homicides.
And can you cite me to any authority or source for your statement that people who hold CPW weapons don't commit murders?
Well, I didn't say they didn't commit murders. I'm saying the number, and we actually had the debate on the, and I don't know, of course, you weren't here for the debate last year on the restaurant carry, but that was a huge issue in the debate, and the sources were cited. I don't have them in front of me now, but we actually had a discussion. Senator from Pickens may remember, but I do remember the details on the, not the actual percentages, but the fact that it was such a low threshold on folks with CWPs.
And would you agree, Senator, that the state or local municipality would be in a better position to submit bills and impose laws that protect the safety of its citizens rather than the federal government?
Well, the 14th Amendment made us citizens of the United States, and I think that was the incorporation debate that I had, like I said, with one of the law professors, that, you know, the 14th Amendment gave the rights to us as citizens of the United States. So I would argue that Second Amendment infringement shouldn't be allowed by state or the cities.
But your bill does, in fact, as the Senator from Horry and the Senator from Sumter stated, does impose some limitations on the Second Amendment. Right?
Senator, I believe that
this is a compound.
Okay.
And you also agree that states have the authority to place some limitations. Is that correct, sir?
I don't see where the states do have the authority, and I also go to the, if you want to talk about where I am on this bill versus what I believe philosophically, I have the Born Alive Infant Protection Bill I've voted for and co-sponsored, but I'm the primary sponsor of Life Begins at Conception, and you could say, well, you voted, you know, to basically, you compromised in supporting the Born Alive. So I have compromised, and I would compromise on this bill. Basically, we discussed restricting it back to the CWP requirements from the legal aspect. I mean, I'm willing to do that to get the bill passed.
To include training?
Not the training. No, we want to eliminate the training, and we want to eliminate the requirement to come to the state and ask for a permit. But I would restrict folks who have broken the law back to the level of the CWP requirements, if that's what it would take to get the bill passed. I would like for all to be safe, but if I can only get some safe, then we'll get what we can pass.
I'm going to have to go down the list that people have been indicating. We'll get around to everybody. Senator from Charleston, are you through? Senator from Travelers Rest, Senator Corbin.
So y'all are ganging up on me. You got my ally's mic here.
I didn't need that anyway, did I?
He may have changed his mind.